Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Aesthetic and Wellness Edge. I'm your host, Bethany Gifford, and after more than a decade working in aesthetics, I now partner with leaders in health, aesthetics, and wellness to uncover growth opportunities and scale smarter, not harder. Today's episode is going to be extremely eye-opening. We're diving into the future of personalized health, where your DNA can actually guide plant medicine, hormone optimization, and even long-term wellness. My guest today has been a pioneer in this space for years, bridging the world of genomics, cannabis science, and functional medicine. But first, a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by New Era Intel. At New Era Intel, we help medical spas, dermatology clinics, and plastic surgery practices who are struggling with inconsistent patient retention, underutilized CRM systems, and manual systems that hold back your clinic's growth potential so they can finally increase quality repeat bookings, streamline operations with AI automation, and grow predictable monthly revenue with the right systems and strategy. They're able to create a premium, seamless patient experience while freeing up their team to focus on what they do best. If you would like to take your business to the next level, head over to neweraintel.com to get started.
Today, I am thrilled to welcome Len May, founder and CEO of EndoDNA. Len is a true innovator with over 278 podcasts himself and a global presentation under his belt. He's had multiple clinical studies with partners like Harvard and even patented on DNA application for the endocannabinoid system. Len, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, take us back to the beginning. You used to operate dispensaries before moving into plant genomics. What kind of inspired you to connect plant DNA and human DNA in the first place?
Yeah, I think it goes back to sort of my childhood as well. When I was a kid, I would sit in class and there would be like sort of multiple windows open in my head. The teacher would call on me and I was daydreaming. So then, I became this sort of underachiever, and I was diagnosed with ADD. I didn't have the H part when I was 14 and put on prescription medication. Uh, I can't say that it didn't work. It depends how you define what work is. It allowed me to focus, but it really took away my sense of connection to my emotional self. So I would go through the motions, but wasn't really connecting with who I truly am. And I was hanging out with some older kids before class, and I'm not advocating for cannabis or anything like that unless you're of age, but this is my story. So they asked me if I want to smoke a cigarette. I was like, yeah, I'm hanging out with the cool kids. I'm going to smoke a cigarette. But I never questioned why they only had one cigarette. So they had one cigarette. It was like four of us, I think, and they passed it around. I took a drag, and it didn't taste like what I remember a cigarette tasting like. So I took another drag, and they're like laughing at me. So they put cannabis in the cigarette. Well, when I went back to class, the windows they're open in my head sort of started narrowing, and I could focus. So I never really told anybody anything, but cannabis became my medicine. It wasn't legal, and I'm from Philadelphia, and I'm actually an immigrant. I was born in Lithuania, and I came over when I was about 6 years old. So I grew up with a family that drugs are the worst. Like it's drugs, no difference between pharmaceutical, but if it's an illicit drug, it might as well be doing heroin. So. Um, my parents kept catching me and yeah, I would get in trouble. And then at some point when I was just about 18, they ended up calling the cops on me and trying to have me arrested and then kick me out of the house. So the irony of this whole story is my parents consume products my company has patents on now for their conditions. So, and my dad's my biggest advocate now. So it came full circle, but it took
Full
years of
circle.
education and all that stuff. Yeah. But so I was homeless and I went through this whole journey. We can get into it if you really want, but started my corporate journey and cannabis was still a big part of my life. And when I moved to LA from Philadelphia, where I live now, uh, at that point in my life, I was a commercial real estate broker, and I was sitting in an office in LA, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do because it's not a reciprocal state. I have to sit for my license again. And these guys came in, they were talking to an agent about opening up an alternative pharmacy. And the guy's like, listen, I don't know what these guys really want. So I came over to them, what are you looking to do? They're like, alternative pharmacy, like really, what are you looking to do? Like dispensary. I'm like, all right, cool. Where's your paperwork? You have to be compliant with SB 420 and Prop 215, all these other things, because I was researching and I had no idea what I was talking about. I'm like, all right, well, I can help you. So I helped them put all the paperwork together. We got a space. And then they said, would you like to come in as a partner? Like, all right, well, what do I do? He's like, you ever watch the show Entourage years ago? I'm like, yeah. Well, there's a guy, Eric. He's sort of the behind the scenes. So you're that guy. You're the corporate guy. I'm like, all right. So they called me Suit. That was my nickname, even though I didn't wear a suit, but that was the role that I took on. So in doing that, we started opening up various dispensaries on the same brand, and we opened up 4 more. And the thing that I started noticing was 2 people will consume the same varietal and have a completely different experience.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's interesting. So like the ADD kicks in where you can hyper focus. And I started researching. I'm like, I got to come up with what this is, a solution for this. So I found a video by a guy who claimed to be the first person to genetically sequence the plant. His name is
Oh,
Kevin McKernan. He was a chief science officer of a company called Medicinal Genomics. So, long story, a little bit longer. I ended up contacting Kevin, spending some time with him. He's like, come on board and, do something with us. So, I came on as a consultant. My job was to travel the US and get a little bit of Canada, but get plant material from different cultivators. They taught me how to extract DNA. So, I bring it back to the lab, extract the DNA from the plant, sequence it, and we started the first genetic sequencing uh, library, I guess, for different cannabinoids and different varietals called Cannapedia with a K, and we put on the blockchain. So there was a chain of custody associated with that. So I really got into the plant side, and the parent company that owned Medicinal Genomics was a company called Cortigen Life Sciences, and they did what's called pharmacogenomics, which is a study of how different medications affect individual bodies, and also drug-to-drug interactions, etc. So I really got into the human side. And light bulb moment was like, you have plant material here, you have human genetics here. Let's bring those 2 together to help guide people to a more personalized experience so they can avoid their possible adverse events. And that was the impetus of, I came to them and they had no interest in it. They closed down the human side. So I was lucky. I got some smart scientists and opened up EndoDNA in 2017.
that is quite the story and the journey to get there. That is amazing. Well, kind of walk us through EndoDNA. Like, how does it work? How does somebody, their genetic predisposition kind of guide protocols for plant medicine, hormone health, supplements? I know that you've kind of integrated AI into the whole platform, so kind of get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So originally, my business partner and we sat down. I'm not a programmer, but I'm sort of an artist, so I can kind of take what's out of my brain and draw it. So the idea was when we met with the FDA, they said, "What is the purpose of your test?" And I said to help people either avoid or mitigate a possible adverse event. So the way that it flowed in the beginning is we were a direct-to-consumer company. We created a genetic test. It's a buccal swab. It's like a big Q-tip. You swab the inside your cheek. It's not like those tests that you have to shove up your nose and all that stuff that pierces your brain. Nothing like that. Very non-invasive. You swab the inside your cheek. You register. We're HIPAA. We're GDPR compliant. It becomes anonymized. So it's de-identified. You have an identifier, same way a doctor uses a medical record. You send that sample to our lab. It takes about 14 business days. Once the sample reaches the lab, you log into the portal. Then you would get your results, and your results would be based on symptomatic conditions. So it depends which test you're looking at. Uh, let's say that it's female hormone health. So you're looking at all your markers related to female hormone health, and a healthcare professional can make a more informed decision with a treatment protocol, looking at their genetic predisposition. So the way that it'll illuminate for them is like, do you have a predisposition to early menopause? Do you have a predisposition to things like hot flash severity, hot flash frequency, weight gain? Are you a good candidate for hormone optimization? What kind of metabolizer are you? So what's your dosing that's specific to the individual? So all these things are provided in the report. Then the machine learning also creates suggestions for the healthcare professional as a treatment protocol. So here are the things that you should be aware of. We're also looking at blood markers as well. So these are the things that you should be aware of. And then when they make their treatment protocol suggestions, or they actually prescribe or make those recommendations, here's your hormone optimization, here's your personalized supplementation, there's a feedback loop. How well is that protocol working for that individual? And then it goes up to the cloud and the AI starts making suggestions. So you know what? There's 50 patients that are similar to Len's genetics that have taken, obviously I'm not taking the female hormone health test. I'm taking the male hormone health test, but just as an example, the AI will say, this is the protocol that showed that it was effective. And the healthcare professional would say, okay, well, that makes sense. But however, instead of using topical hormone cream, I like to do injections of pellets or something like that. That's my own thing. Okay, great. You have the chance to do that. And then the AI will learn how effective that is. So maybe it's more effective, maybe it's less effective. But you always have this bookended experience of genetic predisposition, personalized precision protocol, feedback loop on epigenetic expression. And the epigenetic part is what you measure to see how well that protocol is working for the individual.
That is incredible. I know that we work with a lot of med spas that are kind of integrating the hormone health, especially women's hormone health lately. So it was very fascinating to kind of talk to you previously and figure out how all that works and how it kind of integrate with their systems that they're already doing. So kind of touching on that, like, how would you see that integrating with like an aesthetic place or another wellness place? Like, how could you kind of go in and help them?
Yeah, I mean, aesthetics, the user. So we have a report, for instance, on skin. So one of the things that you can look at is early premature aging of the skin, or certain conditions are associated with skin. So if you know this, you can get ahead of it. By the way, a lot of the skin conditions that show up on the outside are caused from the inside. So
100%.
if you understand that you're prone to inflammation of some sorts, that is triggering autoimmune response. So that's what's going on the inside. On the outside, it actually triggered psoriasis or something else that you already predisposed to. So if you know this inside out, outside in, maybe there's a topical or something you would use on the outside while you're taking an anti-inflammatory on the inside. And if you know this about yourself, maybe you can actually prevent some of these genetic predispositions from expressing themselves. Everything is interrelated. And the thing about genetics that's interesting is, people always say, oh, it's in my genes. It's in my genes. I'm born this way. Well, it's true and it's not true. So we have our genes that we get from our parents, 50% from our mother, 50% from our father. But if you can imagine like a circuit breaker with a bunch of on-off switches. So when we're born, maybe about 20%, maybe 25 in some people are turned on. The rest of the circuit breakers are in the off position. So your lifestyle can help determine how you're going to turn those switches on. There are certain ones you may not want to turn on. But if you don't know this about yourself, then you're going through life without a GPS. So what I look at is your genetics are your life's GPS unit. You know which roads to take, which roads to avoid, where the potholes are, where the traffic jams are. So knowing this, you can make decisions in advance of something actually triggering itself so you can use lifestyle choices more effectively. And lifestyle choices that trigger epigenetic expression, turn those switches on. Number one is what we feed ourselves, what we put in our bodies. the food, the supplements, the nutrients, all those things, that's a huge indicator of epigenetic expression. The second thing is our exposure to things like heavy metals, pesticides, etc. That can affect epigenetic expression. And the third is neurochemistry, our own neurochemistry. So the amount of cortisol that we excrete can actually trigger epigenetic expression that can be measured. So your life's journey is you're in control. And the thing that we always talk about, oh, I'm genetically predisposed to this and this, you may be, but the epigenetic expression of that is within your control if you're aware of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been biohacking for years, and my integrated health clinician is always telling me, like, you're pre-exposed to this. Your markers say that you might have this or might have that. I don't have most of those because of my lifestyle choices and the food that I eat and what I put into my body and the certain supplements and certain hormones and things like that. And, to a certain extent, I do think it is controllable. And that's what I just love about your outlook on it and your approach to it, because knowledge is everything, education, and it's insane. It can completely change the trajectory of your life if you knew better, you know? So I really
I'll,
like
I'll tell
that.
you one. I'll tell you one other thing as an example, my personal example. So I have this phobia of getting my blood drawn, and I know being in biohacking, you're supposed to check your blood all the time, and it's not the needles. I'm all tattooed, so it's not about that. It's about there's something that happens to me since I was a kid. I think my daughter has that. Maybe there is a gene for that. Uh, I literally almost pass out. So last time, and I go to a functional medical professional. Last time I was getting my blood drawn for my physical. I mean, it's such a stressful thing for me. But I laid down or I sat down in the chair and I told them, I said, listen, I don't do well. You'll be fine. We do this all the time. I'm like, I'm telling you, all right, whatever. So I turn around, they stick the needle in. The woman asked me, she's like, have you had anything to eat or drink before? I said, no. Like, well, you're supposed to drink water. I'm like, I was always told not to eat or drink before my blood test. No, 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 you're supposed to drink water. So they gave me like a little tiny bottle of water. So I drank that, stuck the needle in, they're doing it. We're having a conversation. But at some point in the middle of the conversation, I hear, hey, so and so, come in here, hurry up, come in here. So I guess I started sliding off the chair
Oh,
as they're doing my blood test. So, okay, they I they're like, you okay? They got me some juice. So I drank some juice. They're like, well, we have to continue. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, we thought you were going to fall off, so we took the needle out. So I have to do it again. And, all right, fine. So I went back to get my results, and my doctor's going through them. Everything is good. Everything is good. But it's like high blood glucose level. I'm like, really? I don't eat sugar. I don't eat meat. I don't eat sugar. I haven't eaten sugar in years. That's kind of odd. It's like, well, it could be that the cortisol level, the stress hormone that you've excreted, actually triggered the expression of your blood glucose level that
yeah.
shows up high. Now, functional, a regular doctor would say, high blood glucose level, high sugar, you're pre-diabetic, let's get you some medication.
Yep.
What she did, she said, I'm not really concerned about it, but if you are, what I would recommend is a glucose monitor. Wear that for several weeks, monitor and see if that's really happening, which I did. And it only went off 2 times when I was having a drink, like I think it was Starbucks drink that I didn't realize had that much sugar in it. So that went off. And there was a Thai dish that was eaten also, I guess it was in the sauce. But I didn't have a high blood sugar. So the point that I'm trying to make is I don't have a genetic predisposition for it. And if you're looking for what's the root cause, you're maybe looking at a different approach to actual health care than treating a symptom, which is sick care, which we typically do, at least in the US.
So true. I, for the amount of times that I've been attempted to be stuck on some medication for something that just didn't is just a blanket prescription they just like to hand out. You're this, you're that, you're doing. I just hate it. So that's why I'm a huge advocate for blood work. Right panels. And looking at the root cause for sure. I absolutely love that. Well, we had touched on something that kind of stuck out to me previously. I want to talk about the difference between lifespan and health span. So,
Yeah.
if you could tell me the distinction and why it's so important.
Well, I think whether we use whatever words we're using, this is the buzz terminology now and longevity and all this other stuff. I had an aunt who lived, she passed away last year. She lived till 102. So
Oof.
you would think that's longevity. Isn't that what we all want? Well, I can tell you the last 10 to 12 years of her life was spent in a diaper. It was spent it was spent not living, but sort of existing. So when we talk about lifespan and how long we want to live, it doesn't take into account the quality of life. And I think quality of life is probably the most important measure. We want to live as long as we're supposed to live, uh, healthy and cognitively there and functioning, and not have revert back to our diaper stage and be a person that really needs that kind of care that just existing. So I really believe that we have to kind of change the mindset and change the nomenclature and talk about, I had a person on my podcast, Dr. Bill Andrews, who is a specialist. Like, he's has so many patents in the longevity space, and he was talking about the capacity of a human being based on our genetics and telomere length, etc. We may have somewhere around 125 years capacity. Now, the changes in that capacity change based on our genetic predispositions and what we do with our lifestyle choices, and also how we live our lives. So every single time that we smoke a cigarette or have a drink of alcohol, especially later on in our lives, because we have less liver enzymes as we get older, eat, not food, processed things, seed oil, all these different things, it's reducing that capacity for us. So the things that we can control are our lifestyle choices to maximize the absolute capacity that we individually have. Because just because the broad is like 125, that doesn't mean that you have that. Look at your family lineage, what you have. But as long as you possibly can, the health span part of it is the quality of life. So if you start looking earlier in your life to make those modifications, and then later on supplement for things that you may be lacking, and then make those lifestyle choices, you'll be able to live longer, but also healthier. And that is, to me, what the difference is between just living long and living long healthy, which is health span.
Absolutely. Gosh, I would not want to live into 125, that's for sure, unless I was just the healthiest person on the entire planet, which,
Exactly.
our bodies, in this day and age, especially in America, with all the stuff that they've put in our food and environment, it's unfortunate that we would not be
Yeah,
living comfortably at that age, for sure. So,
agreed.
well, to kind of pivot back to the beginning, you had said that your ADD was like a superpower. Can you kind
Mhm.
of, share how that mindset has kind of shaped your career path and, ultimately kind of aiding in EndoDNA?
Well, I think that we tend to start looking at ourselves. Look, you know, doctors are an authority figure in our life. And when we get diagnosed with something, like attention deficit disorder. So now I have a disorder. That means something is wrong with me. And we do this all the time. And we have a disorder, something is wrong with me. Our neurons start firing in that direction and making it seem like it's true. So we can use that as a crutch in life. Oh, it's because I am so and so. It's because I have this disease or this disorder. So the first thing you need to do is understand the root cause. So what does that mean? What does it mean that somebody has ADD? And by the way, a lot of us have environmental ADD,
Yep.
because we have devices and screens and everywhere. So we're all that's one thing that exists. But true ADD or ADHD is there's a genotype associated with that. And if you look at those genotypes, what's really happening is you're born with a depletion of dopamine. So you're not producing as much dopamine as the average person. And what happens is your brain is always looking for the next squirt of dopamine. So you always have these scroll moments, shiny objects and all that stuff is like, oh, well, that's exciting. That's going to give me a lot more dopamine. And when you find a thing that's actually creating dopamine, you can hyper focus on that thing. So, video game designers know this and they design video games for people to start playing so they can keep getting that dopamine hit. Now, is it of value to the individual's life? Are they to do this for 6, 7, 8 hours because they're getting dopamine? Not really. So, for me, like for instance, when I used to go to the studio and paint, uh, I would lose myself because I'm hyper focused. I'm getting the dopamine. I'm getting that exchange. And then, the person who ran the studio would tap me in the shoulder. He's like, hey, we're closing. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, you've been here for 5 hours. I didn't even notice because I'm super hyper focused. So the reframing of this is not a disorder, but this is my advantage is the first part. The second part is understanding that you have a depletion of dopamine and you have to find things and create systems for yourself that actually allow you to use it as a superpower. And what I mean by that is there's books written on this thing as focus, the one thing, focus on one thing. Well, I don't have the capability of focusing on one thing unless it's creating that dopamine squirt. So my superpower is I can do multiple things at the same time. Now, I can't do a million things, but I can do several. And the trick in an ADD or ADHD brain is to be able to create those guardrails. So I'm going to do these three things, not one, but three, and I'm going to do them effectively. And at the end of the third one, I'm going to dangle a carrot for myself. So I'm going to reward myself with a hit of dopamine, whatever that means for the individual. And if you find your flow state and you're able to prime yourself for flow state, that hit of dopamine can also be the reward at the end can also encourage more positive behavior. So I'll give you an example. So my flow state is hiking, for instance. So I'm lucky I live in Los Angeles. I can probably do this all year round. So I complete my tasks and then I reward myself with a hike. Well, guess what's happening in the hike? Because I'm not thinking, my brain is open, it's downloading things and ideas and information because I'm not thinking of that. So I'm actually benefiting myself, my business, whatever else, by rewarding myself with extra dopamine. So the ability to create, there's all kinds of different things. There's a sense of urgency that creates more dopamine. So unfortunately, but I learned how to utilize this. I I procrastinate and I force myself and I wait till, the last minute to do certain things because it's exciting. And I can operate really well when it's exciting at the last minute. Now, that some people don't like to deal with that, like, oh, you're gonna miss deadlines. I'm not gonna ever miss a deadline. I know how to
You're
operate
all,
within
nope.
within my capabilities, but it's true. Like that's the thing. You have to learn how to do that within yourself. And people that have this, you know, I talk to people all the time. I do some coaching even around successful people with ADHD, and some people say, "Oh, I need medication. I need whatever you think you need. Great, then that's fine, but it shouldn't be something that you rely on your entire life. And if you create systems for yourself with those rewards, etc., you can actually use it as your superpower. For me, doing multitasking, being able to hyper focus, being able to have rewards. But on the flip side, when I go and have my lunch, there's only option one or option two. Now, if I have, what am I going to have for lunch today? Now I'm spending 30 minutes trying to figure out and make a decision what I'm going to have for lunch. So you have to
Smart.
create those systems that are right for you to be able to use that as your superpower.
Absolutely. I remember when we were talking before, you were saying you were coaching some entrepreneurs and being an entrepreneur, I think the hardest thing that I have to do is the systems. And it's really, really interesting how once you just implement them, like you said, A or B, not A to Z. you know,
Yeah.
too many choices. You're all over the place, going all over. So I love that. I know a lot of entrepreneurs are going to be very fascinated in getting a hold of you to have you help them, because I know right off the bat, probably about 100, and they do have ADD. But half the time, most of the time, actually, they are super successful and creative and innovative, and um, they're the rock stars of the world. So I uh, I applaud that whole method for sure.
I read a study somewhere that over 60% of billionaires with a B have either been diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, and also
Mhm.
are polymaths. So
Yep.
polymath is, I'm actually writing a book on that too. So polymaths are people who have various interests and dive in deep into an interest, become an expert in multiple fields. So, the poster child or whatever for polymaths is Leonardo da Vinci. So, Leonardo da Vinci had multiple interests and he would become an expert in so many different things. Like people think he's just an artist. Well, one of the things he did was he actually paid people to find cadavers so he can actually look to see how the muscles and how the bones, how people are shaped, and he revolutionized the way you paint a human body because they didn't do that back in the day. So he came up with those things and build weapons and all kinds of different things. So the ability to channel your ADD effectively into polymathy, that is sort of the delta that I think allows people to be financially successful. The flip side of that is a lot of these very successful entrepreneurs, they don't have any balance in their lives and feel that the business or whatever they're focusing on are multiple things, it's actually taken away from them. So they forget how to celebrate their wins and their journey and what they have achieved. And they don't have enough, they don't give themselves any time to be able to enjoy sort of the journey. So as you're able to create reward systems for yourself, you can let go of some of those things. And it's really difficult. Like Sir Richard Branson, you're operating 400 different businesses, but he realized for himself that if I go to Necker Island and I'm able to leverage myself and put people in those places succeed and do what I love best is some marketing, being out there is great. Now I can succeed in all my businesses. And if one of them fails, it's okay because I have 300 other ones behind that as well.
Right. Great example for sure. For sure. Well, I personally can't wait for that book to come out because it is extremely fascinating to me. You always do. You see these billionaires that are just doing it all, and you kind of wonder the inner workings of their mind, how that all works out. So that's wild. Well, Len, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I would love for you to tell our listeners how to get a hold of you, how to implement EndoDNA into their practices and in their health and wellness movement. And then I know you have a couple books going out,
Yeah.
so let us know about those too.
Yeah, so the easiest way for as far as EndoDNA goes, endodna.com. Just contact us there. Len at endodna.com. I'm just trying to get a copy of my one book that's been out there so I can show it and give you an example. I also, my coaching is Len May Coaching, LenMay coaching.com. I do that sparingly from people that I really find interesting where I can add value to them and vice versa, get something in return. I'm on all social platforms, Len May or Len May DNA on Instagram. I do my podcast, which is called Everything is Personal. You can get that wherever you listen to podcasts and plus YouTube. I also do something social called Record of the Day. I have a very large vinyl collection, and like every day I'll pick a vinyl and I'll play it and I'll share that with people. So if anybody wants to look at that, it's on TikTok or Len May Music on Instagram. I have my one book. It's called Making Cannabis Personal. So that's you can get that on Amazon wherever you get books. And there's 2 more books coming out. Like I said, one of them is related to music, and the other one is my ADD and polymath book. So that's coming out soon.
Awesome. 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 Well, that's it for the episode today on the Aesthetic and Wellness Edge. Y'all don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this conversation with somebody who needs to hear it. Spread the word. And until next time, let's leading with innovation and wellness at the center.